All right, so we're going to go over the trades from today. HOLO, probably the biggest percentage mover that I traded, up over 100%, which was great. We did have ZVSA that made a pretty big move, about 160, 170%, but it's a lower price stock, which, I'm not as into because my fees and commissions add up. In any case, I think I missed some action on it, but why don't we look at the charts for a moment? So HOLO, this was a bounce day. This morning, when I sat down early, I really didn't see anything that I loved. The gap scanner, if we look at our top gainers right now, we've got AKLI up 133%. We've got Holo up 95%. ZVSA up 88%. ZVSA, we can look at this quickly. So this one put in a really nice move, but then gave the whole thing back. And in fact, we saw that on a few other stocks today, a squeeze and then a reversal. So, I'm a little iffy about, I was feeling just a bit hesitant today. I was like, I don't know. Saw a couple of these nasty reversals. But my first trade today was on Holo, and it's actually squeezing up right now to a new high. High a day was 13.89, and it just hit 14 right there. So there's a seller at 14, kind of big seller, another seller at 98, and now it's back to 13.50 on the bid. So this one is definitely jumping around a little bit, has slightly bigger spreads. It's got a good amount of volume, but it's easy to get faked out on it. And I did. I hit a high today of 3,000, and I gave back some profit off the top. And, I got a little frustrated. My big loss this morning on HOLO was right at the open. If we look at the chart, I took a trade. Let's see, it was right here for the break through 1080 to an 11, and it flushes right here to $10.11, and then it rips back up basically at the open. But I'll say the first 3 minutes were pretty choppy, pretty big volatility, sort of popping, dropping, and then it pulled away up to 12, micro pullback right there, very clean. Goes up to a halt, 1271, opens, dip and rip, now up to a high of 1389, halts down right here. All right. Now it's rallied back up, pulled back, and is right under 14. Part of me wants to consider continuing to trade it. Another part of me feels like I sort of pushed my luck already a little too much today. I hit a high of 3,000. I gave back 2,000 of it, was up only $997. And I said, I'm going to walk away. I think I'm done. And then I took a trade on this break of 12 right here, which, it was a good trade. But at the same time, there was some risk there. It's important to be disciplined. It's important to walk away green, and walking away with 1,000 is certainly better than going all the way back to flat. So I already pushed my luck a little bit to get myself back to up 2,000. And right here, like for the break of 14, seller stacked at 14, and then back to 1380. Now 14. This is the area where we start to have the risk of a pop and flush. So we already see their seller stacked at 14. Now, rather than buying the breakout, what I would typically do in a hot market is I would be buying it like 1385, add at 1395, and then maybe add again at 14 and look for a squeeze to 1425, 1430. In a colder market, the problem is we never break 14, or we break 14 and then do something like that where we flush down to 1320. And when that happens, you take a big loss. So in the colder market, I'm waiting for confirmation before I'm taking the trade. And so that's kind of right now, it's like not quite confident enough to take it. And so that was the right move there. I'm glad I hesitated on it, but it's challenging because we were just in a very hot market, a few days ago. But momentum has shifted a little bit. Plus, HOLO is not a fresh, like new stock. It's a bounce off the low. And look, it bounced 100%. That's a pretty nice bounce. But should we really expect more? I don't know. Now, something that we also sometimes see is a flush like that, and then it comes back up, and then it pushes through. But at the same time, buying a deep dip like that, you can make some money on those dips, but you also have to be careful because like this one went into a halt down. And so long story short, we have momentum today, but it's a little choppy. And so I took my a loss on LIXT as well. LIXT was pretty nasty. This stock popped up. It had breaking news, has breaking news. It squeezes up, and then the selling was like, it was just intense. Look at the volume on these red candles. 250,000 shares just selling, 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 selling. So sellers were ready. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. It goes up on very light volume, and immediately the sellers, it's almost like they knew the news was coming because they were ready, and they just brought it all the way back down. So I ended up losing 600 on that one, and that dropped me from up at that time 3,000 on the day to up 2,400. And then I took a $500 loss on Holo, and I was up 1,900. And then I took $1,000 loss, and I was up just under $1,000. So I really probably should have walked away today. I let a little bit of FOMO get to me and got back in Holo on that micro pullback at 12. And while this trade was fine and it was a good trade and it worked and I made money on it, I don't know if I'd say mistake, but I kind of said like, I'm done. I think I'm done. And then I took another trade, and that can be that can be risky. That's a risky move. Now, I didn't hit my daily goal and then give back half, but I was up 3,000 and gave back 65%, 70%. So I obviously was on sort of the backside of my P&L for the day. I think I'm still on the backside. I'm still off my highs, and I just don't feel confident enough to push it. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, taken bigger size, and could have, ended up super green on the day, but also I was sort of playing with fire going back into a stock that had already faked me out a couple times. Didn't have the best read on it. And part of that's because it's been played out, sold off, and then today's sort of a bounce day. These aren't always the easiest days for me. So anyway, so that's HOLO. ZVSA, this one I was only watching sort of like side chart, but I'll say that there was a really nice, so this halts up right here. Well, first of all, at the open, it's cheaper. It halts up once, opens, dip, and rip, very clean. So halts, opens, you get the dip, and then when it breaks back through this high, that's the long into the halt. Take some profit. That's what I usually do. Then this opened a little lower, and I said if it breaks over the previous high of 225, that's where I'd be a buyer. It breaks 225 and it rips up to 250. Now, I didn't take that trade for two reasons. One, I was still focused on Holo at the time. Two, I felt like to make it worth it, I needed to take 5,000 or 10,000 shares, but I also was worried about, well, what if I get caught in a halt down? And it did halt down here. So I just decided not to take the risk on that trade. Sometimes when I'm not having a super, super great day, jumping from stock to stock is not the solution. It's better just to be focused on one. And the reason is because when you're jumping from stock to stock, you're usually going to be getting in at kind of the most obvious point, which people who are already in earlier, who are watching it more closely, that's where they're probably going to be taking profit, right? So instead of jumping, I just decided I'm going to stay focused on Holo. I'm going to try to do the best I can on that one. And although I got a small scalp on Lunar, I pretty quickly gave up on that one as well. Lunar, another bounce, had been active last week, but wasn't super easy. A little more thickly traded. Float isn't that high, but just was a little more difficult to trade. Was on the easy to borrow list several days. It is again today. Easy to borrow. Sorry, that's Lunar. Lunar. No, it's not easy to borrow today, but in any case, it was several days last week. So yeah, I didn't have high expectations of that one. Made a couple $100, but nothing serious. At that point in the day, I was sort of like, well, let's see what's moving. It seemed like, and that was earlier, maybe 8:45. I thought, well, if HOLO is going out of play, maybe something new will come into focus. So I'm going to kind of switch gears. But again, I think that was sort of a mistake. Better just to stay focused on one on a day when it's a little choppy. So that is more or less my recap for today. So look, and by the way, so this morning when I sat down, my very first trade on HOLO was at $10.37, which was a great initial entry. And you could say, oh my gosh, Ross, you should have been up, 20 grand on this trade. But it was right down there. I took my first trade, and, given that the stock is sort of a dead cat bounce setup and wasn't really sure how well it was going to trade, I took some profit as it squeezed up to 75 and 80. And then it hit a high of 11, it pulls back, and I got back in. So my first order of business was building that cushion. I got myself up 800, up 1,000. And then from there, 1,500, 2,000 to 3,000. And it was like, all right, good. I'm building a little cushion. And yes, in hindsight, coulda, woulda, shoulda just bought more shares here and held the whole thing. But the focus has to be on building the cushion. Once I have a cushion, then I have a point where I can take some risk. Unfortunately, today, I built a cushion and then I kind of gave some of it back, and I never was able to really get in the driver's seat. That just was the way today played out. Some days are like that. But nonetheless, it's a small green day. And if I had started with really big size and potentially caught a rejection, well, this could have been a big red day. So always want to try to avoid those big red days. Just be slow and steady. That's my philosophy. I'm not going to be, setting records or doing anything crazy, but I'm going to keep my head down, just be the turtle, slow and steady, consistent, get in, get out, lock up a little profit for the day, come back and do it again tomorrow. So that's it for me. I'll see you guys first thing tomorrow morning. Reminder, as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so manage your risk, take it slow, and I'll see you back here in the morning. For Warrior Pro members, I'll be streaming bright and early, and I'll upload my recap later in the day.